Valen, how is...
Okay.
We are live. Okay.
We are live. I think we are live. Well, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start in Spanish. Hola, hola a todos. Bienvenidos a la presentación. One minute, sorry. That's great. Bienvenidos a la presentación del libro Las Competencias Psicoterapéuticas. Tenemos con nosotros a sus tres autoras, a dos de ellas, Francesca, Laura, y también nos acompaña Valentín Escudero, prologuista del libro y uno de los artífices que esta publicación haya sido posible. A lo largo de la presentación hablaremos en inglés y hablaremos en español para poder comunicarnos. En teoría este sistema tiene subtítulos, con lo cual debe resultar fácil seguir el debate que vamos a tener. Yo trataré de darles paso, hacer un breve resumen y también que Valentín como prologuista pueda participar un ratito. Primero voy a presentar a los autores que hoy nos están con nosotros en esta presentación. Voy a empezar por Laura Fruggeri, que es psicóloga y psicoterapeuta, es profesora ordinaria de Psicología Social en la Universidad de Parma y es directora del Centro de Terapia Familiar de Bolonia. Es autora de numerosos artículos y libros e imparte clases en institutos y de formación en Europa y en América. Y también tenemos a Francesca Balestra, que es psicóloga, psicoterapeuta sistémica relacional y doctora en investigación en psicología y que tiene su consulta privada como terapeuta de pareja y de familia. Colabora con el Centro de Terapia Familiar de Bolonia y también es profesora e investigadora. Y tenemos a Valentín Escudero, que es terapeuta de familia, es profesor titular de psicología en la Universidad de La Coruña y es director de la Unidad de Investigación de Intervención y Cuidado Familiar. Además, también es profesor clínico adjunto en la Universidad de Albany, Nueva York, y coautor del programa SOFTA, que es el Sistema de Observatorio de Alianzas y Terapia Familiar. Hoy están aquí para hablar de este manual, que es un libro que ofrece una visión muy amplia y profunda de los diferentes enfoques en psicoterapia y que nos invita a reflexionar sobre los elementos clave que nos llevan al éxito terapéutico. Veréis que cambio del inglés al español. Cuando cambia al inglés es para darle paso a las ponentes y también a Valentín. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us. I want to say sorry because my English is not my stronger skill as a psychotherapist, but I'm going to try to explain myself. We are very excited about the opportunity to talk about this fantastic book and about your clinical experience too. I'm in the university now with my student. They want to translate you a little. We have a lot of questions to translate to Laura and to Francesca, and these questions have been formulated by psychology students who are joining us live today. I'm gonna begin with a summary of the book, and after all of that, I will give you the word, Valentin, to share his thought on this publication, and after of that, Laura and Francesca, you can start your participation. Maybe, Valentin, you can have the word now.
Vale. Perfecto. Muchas gracias, Eduardo. Saludos a todas las personas que estáis ahí con Eduardo y a todas las personas que están siguiendo esto en streaming por YouTube. Yo voy a decir solamente unas pocas palabras sobre el libro. Y quiero empezar por agradecer que tener la oportunidad de decir estas palabras sobre el libro y agradecer la iniciativa a la editorial Sentir de publicar este libro. Yo conozco el trabajo de las autoras, conozco su contexto de trabajo, conozco su relación tan directa, personal, emocional, vocacional el trabajo de la psicoterapia. Y cuando leí este libro se publicó originalmente en inglés, cuando pude tener acceso al libro, tuve una reacción totalmente egoísta. Yo quiero este libro para mis alumnos, para mi gente, porque me encontré que el libro explicaba de una manera muy, muy conseguida, muy eficaz, muy eficiente, muy creativa este tema de las competencias psicoterapéuticas, ¿no? De hecho, Laura lo sabe, que en cuanto se publicó el libro, yo dirijo un programa de formación, máster de terapeutas familiares, que tiene 25 años ya, y lo incluimos como manual inmediatamente. Y quiero explicar por qué, ¿vale? Quiero explicar por qué esta fascinación con este trabajo. Es un trabajo muy bien documentado, es un trabajo que se lee muy bien y que, hablando de las competencias técnicas relacionales, de las competencias epistemológicas, pues uno podría pensar, bueno, es un ejercicio de erudición sobre la psicoterapia, sobre las entrañas, y no, es un ejercicio sobre la práctica de la psicoterapia que lo explica muy bien, lo explica de una manera muy, muy eficiente. Aunque me apasionaría, no me voy a poner en contenido sobre el libro, porque sé que van a hacer una presentación y estoy seguro que van a mostrar precisamente esta eficiencia, esta didáctica. Pero sí quiero decir que el libro habla, como decía, de esta idea de la psicoterapia como un proceso de construcción dialógica, y cuando empiezan a desgranarlo, te das cuenta que están hablando de las preguntas más básicas de la práctica de la psicoterapia. Me gusta muchísimo del libro todo lo que tiene que ver con la competencia técnica, porque es inabarcable, y sin embargo ellas han conseguido hacer un resumen sobre la competencia técnica, una síntesis muy eficiente. Pero bueno, me gusta especialmente porque porque conecta totalmente con mi concepción de la psicoterapia, todo lo que han escrito sobre la competencia relacional y la competencia epistemológica. Y para no extenderme mucho, yo concibo la psicoterapia como una conversación, es decir, como un formato sencillo de conversación, pero que tiene una enorme profundidad. Y el libro explica esta competencia relacional, que para mí es esencial, es un poco la molécula, el núcleo de la psicoterapia. Pero lo que más me fascina, lo que más aprendí del libro, bueno, del libro y previamente del trabajo de las autoras, es precisamente lo que ellas plantean sobre la competencia epistemológica, ¿no? Entender lo que ocurre en un formato sencillo de conversación como algo enormemente complejo, que es cómo está interaccionando tu esquema con el esquema mental de representación simbólica de significados del cliente. Es decir, esta parte del libro de la competencia epistemológica nos hace, yo creo que describe lo que es esencial en un buen psicoterapeuta, que es la capacidad de pensamiento complejo, de ver más allá y de tener un enfoque de curiosidad. Yo aprendí de este libro, pero previamente también de Laura, lo que desde que se lo escuché explicar a ella, yo llamo la madre de todas las preguntas, que es la que se tiene que hacer un psicoterapeuta, que es cuando estás delante de una conducta de sufrimiento errática, desorganizada, contradictoria desde los cánones del contexto social y cultural, hacerte la pregunta de por qué es razonable que esta persona o que esta familia esté haciendo esto. Porque buscar el sentido, porque siempre hay un sentido. Y cuando lo encuentras empieza a ser muchísimo más fácil ayudar a cambiar eso. Cuando llegas ahí. Y ese es el posicionamiento esa es la competencia de forma muy resumida, muy esencial, obviamente epistemológica, ¿no? La idea de construir lo que pensamos que es natural, porque lo que pensamos que es natural, incluido el concepto de naturaleza, en realidad es una construcción social que está basada en una interacción de nuestro conocimiento con nuestras relaciones continuas, ¿no? Con nuestras relaciones sociales. Entonces, bueno, no quiero extenderme más porque me apasiona este tema, me apasiona el libro, me apasiona como ella la psicoterapia y solo quiero que la gente se acerque al libro, que lo conozca y dar ahora el espacio de las autoras para hacernos su presentación y su explicación. Otro de los pero quiero simplemente añadir una nota más que también me parece esencial y que tanto la investigación actual como el propio desarrollo de lo que podríamos llamar el mundo, la cultura de la psicoterapia, está haciéndonos ver que es muy importante, y es que la psicoterapia es una pieza muy específica, es un contexto muy específico, muy determinado, pero que sin embargo no deja de ser una pieza más de un puzzle en el que el contexto, eh, eh, digamos, intrapersonal y el contexto interaccional y familiar y el contexto comunitario y el contexto social están completamente vivos. La psicoterapia es eficiente solo si no pierde la conciencia de que es una pieza de esos diferentes niveles del contexto. Y esto se describe también de una manera muy didáctica, porque no es fácil de explicar, esto se describe de una manera muy didáctica en el libro. Así que nada, simplemente darles la palabra a las autoras y explicar mi agradecimiento, mi fascinación por el libro y mi invitación a todos los que nos estáis escuchando a sumergirse en el libro, porque además es muy difícil encontrarse una explicación de todas estas, de todos estos contenidos con una claridad y eficiencia como la que han conseguido ellas, ¿no? Nada más y paso la palabra a Laura y a Francesca.
Thank you, Valentin.
Thank you, Valentin. Thank you so much for your words and your appreciation. Should I start then? Eduardo, can I start? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. You.
Okay. So we have here the cover of the book with the pictures of the three authors. We wanted you to see also Elena Venturelli, who's not with us. She's the third author of the book. She's not with us because she doesn't speak English, and so she thought that it would be like for her difficult to interact. But here she is, the colleague that together with Francesca and myself wrote the book. And we like to say that the book is a product of many meetings that the three of us had about our clinical work. So the clinical work, the therapeutic work is the foundation of the writing of the book. And the many examples that you will find in the book are, document this roots in the practice, as Valentin was saying. Maybe sometimes the words we choose to define some notion seem to be, philosophical, but they have their roots in the practice and the practice that we share in our center. Also, our book has the roots in the research on psychotherapy that these last years have been conducted. And it's to this research that we refer to begin with. In fact, according to the studies conducted in the first decade of this century, the most effective therapists are those who are competent in their technical model, of course, but also that are able to create a good alliance with their clients. They do not impose their beliefs on clients, but listen to what they bring to therapy, are self-confident, but also able to question themselves, monitor their clients' change within a collaborative dialogue, and are aware of their own internal processes and emotion, and do not let them unconsciously interfere with the therapeutic process. Furthermore, recently, the scientific psychotherapeutic literature has been enriched of a new awareness, the possible social and political roots of personal distress, and the effect that the therapeutic practice has at the macro-social level, confirming or changing the dominant value and the power relationship. In other words, psychotherapy is a complex phenomenon which implies different intrapersonal, interpersonal, social, cultural, and institutional processes. In fact, therapies, as we consider it, is a meeting place where living persons engage in conversation, as also Valentin was saying, through which they negotiate, co-construct meanings, personal identities, relationships, emotion, roles, as well as social reality, such as power relationship, social and cultural identity, values that define what is right and what is wrong. Another aspect that we want to underline about our idea of psychotherapy is that psychotherapy has the unforeseen as a role. The unpredictability is due to the impossibility of unilaterally controlling the therapeutic process, because it is an interactive process, a joint action which is based on coordination. This implies that the essence of psychotherapy is implemented in the contingency of the encounter with clients. And it is in this contingency that therapists must position themselves, being able to navigate the flow, as we say. Now, as teacher of a 4-year school of psychotherapy, the question that we see as most relevant, knowing all what the research says about psychotherapy, the question that we see as most relevant is, how do we teach psychotherapy given this complexity without reducing it, but at the same time being able to answer to the question which the students ask, which is complementary to our own question, that is, how do we know how to do psychotherapy? So the first answer to this question is that the technical resources need to be made available to students of psychotherapeutic courses. And from this point of view, we think that we have a rich heritage of materials that help to read the relational dynamics, and a lot of ideas about methodology to use, both conversational methodology but also analytical methodologies, in order to be able to conduct therapeutic conversations. as Valentin was pointing out, we have a chapter, and we give a lot of examples from different authors that suggest different instruments in order to conduct a conversation which can be helpful and therapeutic. But given the above complexity that we start from, we have to say that technical resources wouldn't be enough without a focus on how to decide if, when, and how to use the technical resources in the process of therapy, given that therapy is a cooperative enterprise. The answer is that the how to use and when to use and if to use the technical resources has not an answer that exists before therapy itself, because therapists decide this as the process unfolds. So from this point of view, other competencies are needed, such as coordinating with client, monitoring the process, being able to change direction accordingly, coordinating with other professionals and agencies, consider the contextual effects, embrace multiple perspectives, maintain or regain a generative position. Now, these competencies, we think, are referred to a complex idea of psychotherapy, but we also think that they can be taught and learned and practiced. So this is what the book is about. And the other competencies that we elaborated and described in the book are this: the relational competency, the epistemological competency, the sensitivity to context, and multi-process analysis. Now, these competencies that you can see in the slide are of a different color because they are of a different level, we think. The technical competency is what we consider and we call a first level competency. The other are a second level competency. Because why do we define them second level, second order competency? Because they help therapists to monitor the process, to take position in it, and they concern the how of therapy, not the what. Now, as you can see, this chart shows the difference between the two different levels of competency. The technical one is here described and has a therapist in front of a client, and a therapist using his or her knowledge, the therapeutic approach, the professional experience, the skills that has learned and developed in his or her career, culture, prejudice, emotional resonance. So this is the background of the therapist that the therapist uses in order to understand what the client is asking and how to help the client to find a way out to their problems. Now, the other competency, the relational, epistemological, sensitivity to context, multi-process analysis, are competencies of the second order because we think are used, implemented by therapists in order to analyze the process, not to analyze the client, but to analyze the process. So not to understand what to do for the client, but to understand how to position themselves in the process in order to make the process therapeutic, that is helpful for the client. Now, we have a chart that describes, you cannot even read it, I guess, but this is how the book is organized. So we have the different competencies here. You can sign them, Francesca, if you want. I cannot do it. We have the different competencies. In the second column, we have like the description of what they are. But then you can see on the third column, smaller, because these are all the exercises that we developed in order for our students to learn how to implement the competencies in their practice. Okay, Francesca will go into details about this.
Okay, we will now focus on the second order competencies. Among the second order skills that we teach in our training, there is the relational competency. Here it is, that we define as the ability to analyze the meaning-making process that therapist and client negotiate and co-create through their interactions. We think that actions are context-shaped and context-renewing, and this applied to therapy means that while interacting, clients and therapists create new contexts of meanings, which become the context for the meaning of future actions. Some studies on extracts of discourses taken from therapeutic sessions have documented that while therapist collects and gives information, while tries to understand the dynamics connected to the problem and explores possible solutions, therapists and clients, through their conversational strategies, construct and deconstruct hierarchies, identities, relationships, roles, psychological states, and social realities, which reflexively influence the therapeutic process. For example, it can happen that a therapy which results in being successful from the point of view of the presented problem produces a dependency of the client on the therapy, thus creating a context in which the more therapist helps the client, the more client is convinced of continuing therapy, to the point that client might need to show some sort of problem if he or she perceives the intention of therapist to end the therapeutic relationship. So while communicating contents, we construct relationship and social realities which do not remain in the background of the therapeutic process, but influence the trend and so the outcome of the therapy. So relational competency, it is a second order competencies, as it implies the ability to analyze the interaction that develops between clients and therapists during their encounter. It allows to monitor the meanings that therapist and client build together, and it guides therapists to position themselves in the interaction in such a way to construct a transformative relational context. So keeping in mind the question that Laura raised before about how do we teach psychotherapy and how do we do it without reducing the complexity that psychotherapy implies, another issue that we address in our book is the need for therapists to be able to change point of view. And as Valentin mentioned it before, we call it epistemological competency. When should therapists need to change their viewpoints? When they cannot make sense of what is happening in the session, when they lose interest in the client's story and get bored, when they start feeling that either clients are resistant or too crazy to change, or on the other side, when they have the unpleasant feeling of being useless. These are the scenarios that signal the therapist impasse. And we claim that in front of these circumstances, therapists need to practice the epistemological competency. That is, they need to change perspective because what they see from the usual point of view doesn't allow them to be generative and doesn't allow them to introduce more novel ways of seeing and doing that are necessary to create a transformative dialogical context. So epistemological competency does not pertain to the therapist's ability to change what they observe or what they might say, or to change a hypothesis, because these are technical competencies, but to change the criteria they use to make sense of the situation they are involved in. Well, however, changing perspective and considering situation from a different point of view are not spontaneous operation, and they do not depend on the therapist's goodwill. In fact, there are several factors that prevent therapists from changing their perspective. For example, an awareness of their own point of view or position. In other words, we are often blind to the categories that we use to observe and understand others and our own world. Or self-referentiality, that is, the beliefs that therapists know more than their clients. Or a simplistic and dualistic way of thinking that implies the existence of only one truth. But there are some antidotes to all these factors, because we think that an awareness can be contrasted through self-reflexivity, that is, reflecting upon one's own system of thinking, premises, and sociocultural positions. The loop of self-referentiality can be overcome learning how to decenter, that is, moving away from one's own position and open a space for the expression of client subjectivity, and also to distinguish between the reasons and the solution is revealed very useful. Finally, simplistic and dualistic thinking can be overcome by practicing complex thinking, which implies acknowledging multiple points of view. Self-reflexivity, decentering, and complex thinking are the expressions of a competency that can be learned and practiced. In fact, we elaborate specific epistemological exercises which can train therapists to become aware of their premises, to understand how reality can be explained, described, and understood in several different ways, and to the center in order to acknowledge clients as competent partners in the process of therapy. So therapists must implement the epistemological competency to protect their clients from the iatrogenic effect resulting from the rigidity of their models or interpretation. And epistemological competency is very important for psychotherapists, as it allows them to embrace multiple perspectives as a condition for a collaborative, ethical, co-creative, and consensual practices. In other words, epistemological competency keeps therapists creative and in a relational position. There are other skills needed to address the different features of psychotherapeutic practice, and we have grouped them into the sensitivity to context. We define acknowledging the context as the therapist's awareness of operating in a broad environment which goes beyond the therapy room. And psychotherapy is not only a significant event for those who participate personally, but also directly or indirectly for those with whom clients have a meaningful relationship. So whether it is an individual, a couple, or a family, what they experience in the encounter with psychotherapists, what they feel, the result they achieve, the changes or non-changes they make reverberate in their daily lives and in the network of relationship they belong to. So psychotherapy, whether the therapist is aware of it or not, is embedded in a network of interconnected systems which affect and are affected by whatever occurs in the therapeutic process. That's why we teach in our training the analysis of the co-evolutionary process triggered by the therapy. The analysis of coevolution does not concern the origin of the presented problem, but the effect that the dissolution of that problem could have on the client's relational context. So this implies for therapists to reflect about the meaning that their intervention with the client take on within the context of relationships between the client and his/her significant ones, and to organize the intervention based on what they believe useful and evolutionary for the client as a component of a broader relational system, and therefore useful and evolutionary for the members of the whole system. But sometimes the broader environment of therapy includes the network of different agencies. And in this case, the therapeutic choices cannot be independent of others' interventions. And doing therapy within a network of agencies need considering oneself as part of one therapeutic plan, albeit made up of different parts, means being open to redefining an intervention in relation to the other's intervention and with respect to the client's need. And given this complexity, techniques are useless without an understanding of this coevolutionary process. And finally, the multi-process analysis, because individuals and their systems grow within a web of processes that connect personal features to interpersonal aspects and both to socio-economic, political, institutional structures. So factors such as social and cultural affiliations, power relations, material conditions of existence, dominant ideologies, socioeconomic processes, norms, and values that validate and maintain the social order are not a background to the development of individual paths. They are factors that, intertwining with personal characteristics and with the quality of interpersonal relationship, define the well-being of individuals and the functioning of the group to which they belong. So this implies that a therapist adopts a multi-process approach, which involves considering the interdependence of individual, interpersonal, and social processes in defining the well-being or distress of individuals. So acknowledging the context in this sense means considering how the social dimensions of people's existence can influence the development of discomfort and how necessary it is to keep it in mind, both in the process of explorations of client story and in the implementation of intervention. So I'm coming to an end, but I want to underline that all these competencies that we have described are not techniques. They are relational and epistemological postures. They are second-order abilities, and they concern the positioning of the therapist in the therapeutic process. And we took up the challenge to operationalize them, to translate them in methodological principles that may guide our students to navigate in the flow of the therapeutic process, and of course, to face the unforeseen, to stay in a relational position, and to address the possible social implication that therapy has. So I've done the presentation, and we are open to our questions and reflection. Everything.
Okay. Valentina, I don't know if you want to say something. You can listen to me? Yes? No? Hello? Valentin? Okay.
Sorry.
Francesca.
Could you repeat, please? I didn't get you.
¿Me escuchas?
Sí, ahora sí.
Vale, perfecto. Venga, empiezo trasladando las preguntas, ¿vale? Si las entienden, o sea, si no las entienden, las podemos traducir al inglés, ¿vale?
Vale.
Comentabais la importancia del pensamiento complejo y la curiosidad en el libro, y me gustaría saber si estas competencias se pueden desarrollar en programas formativos o son innatas en el profesional.
Do you need translation?
No, I think I understood.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, this is always the first question. Is something that is in the person, or is something that I will be able to learn in the training?
this, I think that this was exactly the intention we had writing the book, because we think that the ability to take a complex point of view, a complex thinking, is not natural, it's not spontaneous in our society, in the Western society. We are more inclined to think that there is only one truth, that something is either true or false. And so in order to take a complex thinking, a complex perspective, as we describe in the book, that is to be able to connect the opposites, to be able to give multiple description of the same event, to be able to describe things from an evolutionary point of view, that is to emphasize novelty instead of continuity, are all ways of thinking that are not natural or spontaneous in our culture. We are either we prefer to emphasize continuity, equality. We prefer to look for the truth, the only truth that is possible. So we developed exercises in order for our students to become able, if you want, to play with these different perspectives, to be able then to change them if what they are seeing is not useful for the client. I think that in literature, in the Anglo-Saxon literature, they talk a lot about reflexivity and self-reflexivity. What we think is that self-reflexivity, so become aware of your own premises, prejudice, perspective, and so on, is not enough if you don't have other points of view you can, rely on in order to play and change while you talk with the client. So this is something that I think you need to learn. We don't think it's a matter of goodwill. We don't think it's a matter of being spontaneous. We think it's a matter of training, exercise, practice, and implementation. This is one thing in terms of complex thing. The other thing about curiosity is that what Valentin was calling the mother of all the questions. I think that curiosity is not just that, I'm curious about. No. The curiosity is being able to raise questions that allow you to decenter, to put yourself from the point of view of client in terms of what is the context from where the client makes sense of his or her own behavior. So we start from a premise, a prejudice, if you want, that all behaviors have a sense from some sort of point of view. We need to find out, and we can do it only by, a conversation with our clients, so that they can discover and reveal somehow, the context, the perspective, they are making sense. So we develop this idea of making a distinction between reason and solution. The reasons is what move people to find solution. Sometimes the solutions are not functional, but the reasons are always legitimate. So we need to legitimate the reasons and eventually help people to change solution. So this is for us curiosity, and this is also something that can be helped through the right question. For example, we have some question that we call flip question, So, for example, from which point of view, what we consider irresponsible sounds responsible for our client? From which point of view, what we consider, wrong, they consider it right? Because there is a point of view from where people make sense of what they do. And I don't know, Francesca, if you want to add something.
I think you said everything.
Okay. Perdón, porque estoy manejando dos audios a la vez, el de la sala, el de este, entonces voy con un poquito de retraso y no puedo participar mucho de la conversación. Os voy dejando las preguntas y así las podéis contestar. Bueno, me gustaría preguntar, en el libro señaláis la importancia de las preguntas durante el proceso psicoterapéutico. ¿Por qué consideráis que un terapeuta que hace buenas preguntas es mejor que uno que basa su terapia en consejos o directrices hacia sus pacientes?
I don't understand the last part of the question. If you can... Valentin, you have to turn on your microphone.
The last part of the question is, what do you think that it's better therapist, that is a better therapist, the one that do good questions instead of the one that is giving advising and indications, etc. What do you think that make good question is the best?
Better than giving exact advice.
Because the notion of giving advices means that we know more than our clients, and that is one of the factors that prevent therapists to be able to change their point of view and to connect to the center with the point of view of the client. So if we start giving advices, we can think that we know best what is best for our client. But we think that it is not useful because we do not know what is best for our clients. We must be able to help our clients in discover new meanings, new possibilities, new ideas, and our clients then will be able to choose what is best for them. So we start from this idea that psychotherapy is a context of meanings. And from this perspective, our job is to being able to generate new meanings, to co-create contexts of meanings that can be transformative for our clients.
Okay. I have a lot of questions, but I'm gonna ask the last one. Observamos un debate abierto entre compañeros sobre qué modelo es mejor y cómo señalan la importancia más centrada en los procesos o los factores comunes o los metamodelos en este libro. Algunos de ellos, como la pirámide de Fife, lo relatáis. Me gustaría saber la importancia que tiene en la práctica clínica incorporar estos avances en metamodelos y trascender de esta visión centrada en técnicas.
Io
ho bisogno di capire meglio le domande.
Ok,
in una lingua che comprendo fino in fondo.
Sì, ma credo che parlasse del modello di
sì, quello l'ho capito.
Dei fattori comuni, no? E dei fattori comuni. So we actually think that what we call second order competency that make the therapist able to analyze the process is like something that any model should be able to take. So actually the relational aspect, for example, of of psychotherapy, that is the relationship between the therapist and the client, for example. The relationship is there no matter what the model is. Okay, so we start from that perspective. The systemic therapist, as we are, of course, should be more aware of the relationship, because we base our model on the relationships. But also the CB, the behavioral and cognitive therapist, develops a relationship with the client. And what the research says is that relationship is very important for the exit, for the outcome of the therapy. So actually, we define this competency as something that could be across the different models. But not only that, I don't know if I open up too much, but we think that the second order competencies should be implemented also by different professionals in the helping professions. That is like social workers, for example, nurses, doctors, educators, because every relationship, every intervention in this in working with people have, the characteristic of psychotherapy. Social worker deal, for example, with categories of clients that they need to develop an epistemological competencies. That is the ability to reflect on their prejudice and the ability to take different points of view with those category of clients. As Valentin has taught us, we have to say, working with multi-stress families, you need to have an epistemological competency and being able to see things from different points of view, because multi-stress families have multi-stress problem in relationship to services, for exactly for the reason that usually professionals are rigid in analyzing their realities. I don't know if I answered to your question.
But if we find an explanatory model about the mechanisms of action of psychotherapy, we will be able to develop our own discipline without the need to import theoretical framework from other discipline, as happened, for example, with the psychodiagnosis of medicine. Why is there so much resistance in training institutions such as the university to incorporate these contents in formal training program?
I think because they are more difficult. Don't you think so? I think that teaching, what to do is easier than teaching how to monitor a relational process, an interactive process. Because as we said at the beginning, while you are in the process, you don't know what's going to happen next. You only know it when it happens. So you need to be able to stay in that contingency and, move together in collaboration with client. Now, this kind of ability, this kind of skill is not easy to be taught. And so I think that this is the difficulty that the majority of training courses have. It's much easier to say, you do this, this, and this. For example, it's much easier to teach the questions. But as we always say, we have a lot of questions made available in literature. and we want our students to learn them. But the competency, which is most important, is when do you ask that question instead of the other one? Making this decision is something that you can only know it while you are talking.
Ok, thank you very much. Valentín, no sé si quieres decir algo para cerrar.
Solamente que creo que han sido unas respuestas muy precisas, excelentes. Yo a veces pienso que estas competencias descritas en el libro de segundo orden, especialmente la competencia epistemológica, en realidad igual no es algo de la psicoterapia solamente. O sea, creo que la psicoterapia avanza eso, pero que dentro de 500 años el ser humano tendrá un pensamiento complejo. Bueno, o no habrá sobrevivido. Si ha sobrevivido, habrá evolucionado hacia exactamente esto, que ahora los psicoterapeutas, algunos pensamos que es una cosa de la psicoterapia, pero estamos los psicoterapeutas haciendo conversaciones que quizás, formas de pensar que quizás dentro de 500 años o de 1000 años los niños aprendan, sea un estadio que se aprenda de pequeño, el pensamiento complejo, porque es la base de la empatía, de pensar por qué esa persona, lo que yo veo correcto, lo ve de otra manera, etcétera. Eso al final, igual teníamos que empezar también ahora en los niños pequeños en la escuela a hacer muchos ejercicios de pensamiento complejo como antídoto para combatir las simplificaciones, el populismo, la violencia que solo se engendra por pensamientos simples, ¿no? Bueno, me he salido un poco, perdón, me he salido, pero ha sido un poco la inspiración.
Y daría para mucho, porque recién estuve en una conferencia de Luciano Luterau, que es un psicoanalista argentino, que precisamente no tenía una visión tan optimista, porque decía que los pacientes que Freud describía ya no existen, porque de alguna forma en esta nueva forma de vincularse, donde hay relación pero no hay vínculo, hay un retraso madurativo que afecta precisamente a la capacidad de reflexionar sobre propios procesos. Pero bueno, sería un tema a debatir efectivamente y no nos vamos a exceder. Agradezco mucho a Valentín su presencia y la iniciativa de hacer posible este libro, y agradezco también el tiempo de Francesca y Laura por darnos estas pinceladas tan importantes y por apostar por estos modelos competenciales para ayudar a los profesionales a mejorar sus resultados. Y os animo a todos los que estéis viendo este vídeo que podáis leer el manual y que podáis adentraros en esta nueva forma centrada en metamodelos, en factores comunes, que yo creo que va a nutrir mucho la práctica psicoterapéutica. Así que muchas gracias por vuestro tiempo y os mando un abrazo muy fuerte.
Muchas gracias a todos for organizing this.
Okay. Right.
You have to say in Spanish everything.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Chao, chao. Chao,
Chao,
Francesca,
chao.
Laura, chao, chao.